guys, Coach Kurt. So about 4 months ago, I made a video how to make Aikido work in the real world. And that was inspired by a question from one of my viewers in the comments saying, hey, how do you make that Steven Seagal shit, that's a quote, work? Or he said something of that nature. And I did the video, and I liked it, but I didn't like it. And then I got up this morning drinking my coffee, and Ramsay in Shanghai, China. If you guys don't follow Ramsay, here he is on the screen. The guy is an amazing MMA coach, phenomenal martial artist, has no actual official ranking in any of the systems that you would think of, like Aikido, Hapkido, Taiho Jitsu. And we all know that belts don't actually mean crap. There's people that are amazing coaches, and they don't have any official belts. You see that in Muay Thai. There are no belts in Muay Thai or systems like Sambo. But I digress. I get sidetracked. And I was like, oh my gosh, he explained it and demonstrated it so well. So let me try to read this again. Aikido Making It Work in the Real World 2.0. The problem with traditional systems of Aikido and Hapkido, and I say this again if you don't know, I've got a black belt in Taiho Jitsu and Hapkido. I've done a lot of cross-training in Aikido, and this it requires a lot of blending from a punch that's very telegraphed from the outside, like usually in a cutting sword motion. Here on the screen, you're seeing a more realistic. The guy throws a punch, and you entangle in the clinch range, and you do the throw, takedown, off balance, whatever it is, whatever kind of kazushi it is that you use to off balance. That's how it's done. And on screen, you see me using a throwing dummy, practicing my kazushi. This is more judo style. As you know, I've just recently gotten a judo, loving it. But that's me using the throwing dummy and practicing kazushi from a grab. So, to get back on track, how do you make Aikido work in the real world? Well, I brought this up in the first video. I think it's wrestling or grappling in general. You see here I am in clinch range. I believe that the clinch range, learning to pummel and clinch at either gi or no gi, it doesn't matter. Two kind of different, but the same ways of entering in the clinch. Very different from when you see traditional Aikido. Here you are on the screen using, I call it the Aikido Uki syndrome, where the person is just way too cooperative. And unless you practice against a real resisting opponent like you get in wrestling, in Sambo, and Judo, and Greco-Roman wrestling, all these systems, BJJ, like from a punch, you see again how I use the elbow shield against the punch and I clinched. He's giving me some real simulated energy. That wasn't a real roll energy or anything, but you have to build up from the basic drill. Here we are basically drilling the clinch range from the pummeling into an arm pass to get to the arm pass, to get to the outside with a duck under or an arm pass, or however, in this case, it's an arm drag. But to get to the outside, to open you up for those Aikido type, Japanese Jiu-Jitsu type, Taiho Jitsu, Hapkido, again, rose by any other name, right, guys? You see this in Chinese China, any of these joint manipulation styles. To get to that outside, the best way, from real-world experience, I have discovered. Again, if you don't know, I'm in law enforcement the last 26 years. I've used my Hapkido quite a bit on the street, but it's also failed me over the years in certain contexts. So was on that quest to make it work. And when I found Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and MMA at the time, I thought, I found a way to make it work. It was simple wrestling setups, or how do you get into the clinch safely from a strike, as far as MMA is concerned. And in BJJ, it was how do you get into the clinch just from grip fighting. And I'm really discovering that in Judo, guys. I thought I knew how to take people down and I knew basic throws and that was adequate. Man, I am getting spanked on a nightly basis when I go to Judo. Grip fighting practice in Judo is a different world, and I'm really enjoying it, and I'm learning a lot. I'm also discovering, even though it's not in the rule set of Judo, you can't use wrist locks like you're seeing on the screen in judo. But as I'm grip fighting with my opponent and trying to learn the judo way of going in and taking somebody's balance, their kazushi, and throwing them, I'm re-seeing ways to go for that wrist. Obviously, I'm not doing it because I'm practicing judo. I'm not practicing, like here you're seeing a temiwaza. I call it the V8 strike. I've gone over that quite a bit in my videos. But when you're grip fighting in judo, I'm seeing visually and rediscovering these great ways to grab the wrist that I could probably use in a role like in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu against somebody who's prepared for that kind of stuff. You don't see a lot of that in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because people's ukemi, their ability to take a throws is not nearly as good as like Aikido, Hapkido, Judo, these systems, Sambo. So it's very discouraged to do any kind of wrist manipulation in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, especially at the lower belts. I think blue belt and above, you can do the wrist manipulation. But I have discovered the only way to make it work is you have an opponent who's willing to practice this stuff with you. And you see me on video right now with my coach Colton back at my old duty station. He was my MMA and Krav Maga coach, and he sets me up for a beautiful hip throw right here. But how did we get to that hip throw? Well, from an actual what we called clinch sparring. We put some gloves on. We weren't killing each other. We were just clinch sparring. And here I am doing just some basic clinch drills, showing my training partner how could you get to the back or do the arm pass, and what things present themselves in more of a hop key or I key method. And I think that was the lesson of the day when he was like, well, how would you use your Hapkido on the street from clinch? And I was like, well, great question. And from the clinch, and here it is in the gi where I'm just doing like an arm pass. I'm actually grabbing the gi and doing an arm throw, Hapkido style arm throw from the clinch. You have to practice the clinch. It doesn't matter if you're doing your judo, Japanese jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, Sambo, whatever style of grappling you're doing. The systems that work against resisting opponents are the ones that are super successful, even if they're sport. Well, like, yeah, I wouldn't do that because that's sport. Yeah, guys, I hear that about judo, for example. Yeah, it's sport. It's an Olympic sport. But if some judoka gets their hands on you in the street and throws you on the cement, fight over, game over. You might as well just hope they take you to the hospital when it's all said and done. And they got to that ability using that power from judo. Here we are with Ramsay Dewey, again, demonstrating it's basically a kotagaishi, or outside wrist throw. And he is practicing it or teaching it to the camera, but with one of his students there in Shanghai. Again, I will leave you a link. You guys have to watch his channel. It's probably one of the best martial artists on YouTube. Very intelligent, well-spoken. You learn a lot from listening to this guy. But he's teaching kotagaishi in a safe way of doing it. As a law enforcement officer, I'm looking at that. Yeah, that's a safe way of doing it. Here I am doing it from a basic pummel drill. We do 1, 2, 3, and then I would chuck off the arm and go into a kotagaishi. I didn't actually throw. Here it is again. 1, 2, 3, chuck off the arm, kotagaishi. Kind of a similar setup. Ramsay, I think, does a better job, of course, because he's a much better coach and martial artist than I am. He sucks it into the waist better. Here I am again in the clinch range. Basically, what I'm saying at the end of the day, at the end of this video, and the end of all my videos, I push the clinch range. The clinch range is the key to make any of your grappling work. And I suggest to you the most important fighting range to be really good at. You can be an adequate puncher to defend yourself good enough to get into the clinch range. And if you are better than the other person at clinch range, you're going to take them down and master the fight. If you can throw them to the ground and hurt them, fight over. You can run away, walk away, what have you, or in my case, arrest them. Or let's say they're a better grappler on the ground than you, well, then you be a really good clinch fighter to keep it in the clinch range, what I call your judo range or your wrestling range, or more of your Greco-Roman. Judo, one of the rule sets in judo is to that beautiful ippon throw. If you can master that judo range, either in the gi and the no-gi, because I practice no-gi as well when I'm at my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu classes, and gi mostly with my judo classes. Now we do some judo or gi in my jiu-jitsu classes as well, but the throwing isn't nearly as sophisticated. But this takedown that Ramsay's showing you is basically, how do you make Aikido work? Well, this is how you make it work. And he's demonstrating one technique. And I've heard people say, well, how about this technique? How about this technique? How about this technique? Guys, realistically speaking, and again, I'm a Hapkido black belt, Taiho Jitsu black belt. I discovered early on, here he is demonstrating, this is where you want to grip when you do Kodagaishi, not on the wrist or forearm, but on the neck of the wrist, just above the palm of the hand. He's saying, look, the guy has more strength if you grab high, but if you grab low, you take away a lot of his strength. You have much more control of the wrist. And then, of course, he sucks it into his center line and controls the takedown that way. But what I was getting at before I got into a side tangent about how awesome he's teaching this technique is there are certain Hapkido techniques and Aikido techniques that just are not going to translate well because they are taught in a bubble, in a beaker per se, very scientific against a very cooperative uke. It's basically in kata form where it's beautiful and fun. I'm not suggesting for a second you shouldn't enjoy it and shouldn't practice that stuff, but if you want your Aikido, Hapkido, whatever to work in the street, you have to be willing to say, I'm chucking this out, I'm chucking that out. It's not a matter of, well, just do it differently. In some cases, yes. Here's an example of how you do Kodagaishi differently. You've seen in my previous videos how I've used Sankyo, your twist lock, excessively well in the street. I don't do it the way I was taught it in Hapkido. I do it the way I know will work on the street. So what I'm saying is being willing to sacrifice a lot of stuff that you should be willing to give up. If it doesn't work on the street, why would you want to practice it anyway, unless you're at that point in your life where you're just doing it for the fun of it. All right, guys, I hope you like it. Please like, subscribe, and share. Everybody take care, stay safe, and I hope you liked the video.
Let's roll. Hey, let's be careful out.